I believe we're good, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Will. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to Tuesday, June 24th, Council Meeting 2025, starting time 6:30. And we'll start with the disclosure of pecuniary interest. Okay, we're going to change things up. We're going to move item 5 up next. So Operations Superintendent Dan McGinnis can speak, and Chris on this resolution.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Chris, if you want to start off.
Okay, I just was going to say we circulated to council, a report to council with all of the results from the reissue of the tender. We did have 4 bids this time, so that was a better option. And Kim did check the references as well. So we came to our conclusion, but I'll let Dan explain what our conclusion was.
Yeah, so it basically came down to 2 bidders. We felt kind of comfortable with, 107 Excavating. They had the cheaper price, but good references. But just I don't think they had the experience to do such a big culvert job. So I think my recommendation is to go with Levesque Brothers. They have a lot of experience in doing multi-plate culverts. Little over budget, but I think the experience it'll be more hassle-free with them doing the pipe.
And as far as the budget goes, we did review some things. So we're having some trouble still getting someone to come and do the Bear Creek culvert project that we've been looking at. So until we have someone lined up for that, it is holding, and we feel that it will hold for this year. So we can take the money that we had budgeted for that project and split it between the overrun for the Stonecutters Road project and for the unexpected South River Road culvert project, and cover those. We've also applied for funding, so we'll know more as we wait. So
the last pipes were delivered at South River today. There's been 4 loads of pipe come in. So only 1 pipe per truckload because it's so big. So the last pipe arrived today. So I'm shooting for July 20th to start that project. Let the water recede down a bit. Finish up we're going to do the gravel run down on the south end and apply calcium, and then we're going to move on to the South River project.
That staff's recommendation is that we accept the tender from Levesque Brothers Haulage, that we defer the Bear Creek Culvert project to the 2026 capital project list, and that we utilize the $700,000 that was budgeted for the Bear Creek Culvert project for those 2 projects. And we're going to continue to follow up on that grant application for the South River Road project and the Bear Creek Culvert.
Correct.
Any discussion?
No discussion. Just a question. If the grants come in, will Bear Creek go back on the books?
Please.
Okay.
If I don't, so with that grant, we have a 2-year window, so we can still do the project in 2026 with that grant money.
Yeah, that's what I was more or less making sure that if we did get it, I didn't want to lose it because we weren't able to secure a contractor or something to do that job. Is there anything on the Bear Creek that has to be done before it gets done? Like,
No, I think we're,
is there
Yeah.
any?
I've had the surveyor out there to survey the skew of the creek. We have that all documented that's to lay out the abutments. And we've had the surveyor mark out the hydro lines to see if we can swing the crane around them, but that won't, when we go to do it, we'll have to have the hydro disconnected. But it's all surveyed and basically ready to go. All the pre-work is done. I mean, the only thing left to do is cut some trees up alongside the road for the temporary bypass. But I think we'll just hold off until we are ready to go through with the project.
As long as we're more or less shovel ready, that's all I was concerned.
Yeah, we're ready. We would just have to get a hold of Hydro again to have them get ready to disconnect the hydro and reconnect after the crane is done.
Anyway, I like how this was done, and it's a very good choice. I think the way you guys went with this, that you're a very good company to have to the project.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Chilipinko and Councillor Foote. And I'll read it, that we award tender, PW-10-2025 reissue for the replacement of Stonecutters Road Pipe Arch Culvert 2, J&P Levesque Brothers Haulage Limited, for the amount of $468,870.90, including applicable taxes. And that we defer the Bear Creek Culvert project to the 2026 capital project listing, utilizing the budgeted amount of $700,000 towards the budget overrun of the Stonecutters Road project and the anticipated unbudgeted South River Road Culvert project. All in favor? Moved.
before we let Ken go, maybe just say something. Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
So with the declaration of emergency in Bondfield, the Township of Nipissing has a mutual assistance agreement with Bondfield, Callender, Chisholm, East Ferris, and Powassan. And this was the first time that it's been utilized. So our crews went over and helped Bondfield with their roads the past 2 days. I just wanted to bring that to everyone.
And as a counselor in Bondfield, I'd like to say thank you very much for lending the support.
You're very welcome.
Sunday was a busy day.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night. So now we're going to move on to our presentation from Alice Newton. Welcome to our council meeting.
Yeah.
Take your time.
There we go. All right.
I know we just had one last week, and then the video clip, because it's hosted on YouTube, it like kept playing an ad in the background, so it was kind of funny, but I'm just like giving you a heads up in case, like, close the window. Like,
We've had that.
so like, yeah. You control that. Okay, yeah, so thanks for having me, Chris, for inviting me and setting this up. So today we will talk about impact, property assessment, property taxation, big segments. So yes, Alice Newton, account manager. I do cover Nipissing and Perry Sound districts at impact, and then the area or the team that I work in covers what we call Zone 7, so that's around here all the way to Kenora, so a pretty big area in Ontario. Not really me, I'm just in this area, but obviously we know that there's been a lot happening on the weekend, so I'm happy to hear that nothing happened here in Nipissing, and hopefully Bonfield, everything is getting sorted and they're gonna put the highway back together. That'll be nice. Next slide. So today I do want to talk about, oh, also, who's controlling, is it Chris? You are? Okay, I'll tell you next slide. So today we are going to talk about just who MPEC is, what we do with assessments, kind of the property taxation system, where our values come from, what information we look at, some resources for both yourselves as council and also for the public, or if anyone's watching today. So yeah, generally MPEC, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, we are legislated to provide assessments for all properties in Ontario, and that includes your residential properties, it includes super complex properties. We have lots of evaluators all over the province who provide quality assessments. We are a not-for-profit organization that was founded by the provincial government in order to bring equity into property assessments and the system as a whole. We're governed by a 15-member board that's appointed by the province, and that includes people with provincial interests. It includes people with municipal background as well as the public. Next slide. So looking over the assessment system as a whole, there are 4 key players. So the provincial government, I want to start with them. Even though people think of assessment, they think of MPEC, it all starts with the provincial government, and they are the ones who are responsible for setting the property assessment legislation. Included in that is the property assessment reassessment date. So currently we're in January 1st, 2016. They're also responsible for setting the education tax rate. They oversee the assessment review board, the appeal system for all assessments in the province. And also setting tax policy legislation. Then we have MPEC. So as stated, we are the ones who are creating all of the assessments for all the properties in Ontario. We are also responsible for overseeing requests for reconsideration. We're part of the appeal process. Then obviously municipalities, which are well aware what you do, but essentially assessing the needs of your community, setting the budget on an annual basis, determining the tax requirements, collecting the taxes, being the bad guys, I guess, sometimes, and remitting the education taxes, and then also the property owners, so paying the taxes, and also they play a key role in determining what fair assessments are by filing requests for reconsideration, and also just being members of an open market system, because property owners interacting in the market informs how assessments are, because we do look at sales significantly. Next slide. So just to kind of start off at the top, I think it's important to state that, currently when we think of property assessments, we have a common valuation date in Ontario, and that date continues to be January 1st, 2016. As we know, there has been a pause on the assessment and changing the current valuation date in Ontario for all properties. Starting in 2020, that was to be, I think, the last reassessment date. It has been paused because of COVID-19, and then also starting in 2023, the province did signify that they are completing a review of the system. And that's targeted primarily to ensure that it remains equitable, that it remains fair, with the focus on businesses. Now, we don't know what the outcome of that is, because as far as we know, it hasn't concluded, and we don't expect there to be an announcement on the assessment date until that does take place. So within this period, MPEC does continue to carry out our day-to-day work to maintain the property assessment system in the province, as well as we would champion for the assessments that we provide and for reassessment where possible. But just to kind of get that out of the way, when is the reassessment? I don't have a date for you today, but I can say that, the province is working behind the scenes on Next slide. So in terms of, what is maintaining Ontario's property assessment look like? What is MPAC's role outside of reassessment? What are we doing on a day-to-day basis? In addition to delivering reassessments at that phased-in cycle, we are working every single day to ensure that assessments remain fair, equitable, and up to date. And what I mean by that is capturing any new assessment. So it's important to note that although there's no reassessment of all the property values in the province, what we will see is still assessment growth, and that would be from people taking up building permits, from people severing and consolidating properties. You still create growth within the existing tax assessment outside of a reassessment. So we are monitoring all of that. We also look at all sales within a municipality. Like I said before, part of an assessed value is based on market transactions and market sales. So even though there is no reassessment announced, it's really important for MPAC to continue to monitor all of this activity and ensure that when there is a reassessment, we have the values that we need in order to provide that equitable and fair system. We also have other legislative roles, which includes processing requests for reconsideration, processing vacancy and tax applications, the consolidations and severances. So a number of other things that are happening. Next slide. I do want to focus on the building permit process and our role in that and how building permits do translate into assessment growth for a municipality and why they are important. So when we get notified from the municipality of a building permit, we kind of go behind the scenes to start organizing our workload in order to make sure that that turns into assessment. And what that means is as soon as we're notified, we create a work object in our system and it gets assigned to somebody. And in the background, we have different triggers that get assigned to the work based on our own information on how long something will take and all of these things. So we start the work to make sure that we're going to capture it and notify the property owner, go out, do the assessment, make any corrections to the property. And then depending on the value of the work that's done, that change will be reflected either in what we call an in-year change for the current assessment year, or it might be reflected on next year. But either way, that's kind of like how those building permits do feed into new assessment. I do want to look at some kind of numbers that are specific to Nipissing today. So we've probably seen in a lot of the communications that I've put out, yes, there's millions of properties that are assessed. Yes, there's billions of dollars. Yes, it's trillions of property taxes. But what does that mean here? So, essentially starting in 2024, before the end of the roll, there was just a bit over 2,000 properties here. And during that 2024 period that MPAC worked last year until the roll closed, we were able to add over $3.5 million in new assessment for a total property value of over $420 million. So those are the numbers, that are relevant here. And that was directly from looking at building permits, adding more properties through severances. That's where that growth kind of came from. Next slide, please. So again, looking at the number for 2025, what this screen represents is you can see that it went slightly up from the slide before, and that's to represent that every single year, a few more properties do get added. That's a few more ratepayers that are in the existing base. So what I want to highlight here when we look at this property count as it's organized kind of in relation to like what tax class they would fall into, it's important to see that, for Nipissing, almost 90% of the assessed value is derived from residential property types. And that means that, when we see growth for residential, primarily municipalities, that means that growth, like I said before, like a broken record, is coming from people taking up building permits. It's coming from people building new homes. It's coming from people taking larger properties and saying, I'm going to put through lots here. That's where that growth is primarily coming from. Next slide, please. And then to kind of say it another way, the other one was showing 90% residential, and this one's showing, 94%, and we see the frequency is up a little bit, and this is representing, again, the tax classes. So just to highlight here, the key takeaway is that a single property can have multiple tax classes, and also just to acknowledge again that, not all tax classes are created equal when it comes to assessed values and the revenue that's going to be generated through property taxes. So again, we see within this mix that it's actually even higher. That's represented by the residential class. So there's no test also after, I do want to say. But just to kind of break it down in a few different ways, I have the different numbers. Next slide, please. So we did talk about that common valuation date, and what that translates to is this concept of the current value assessment. So when you hear assessment and you hear current value assessment, that current value assessment is tied to the valuation date. It's not what it would sell for today. And I know that's a common question that comes up. The property assessment is a lot lower than the market. So how can this be accurate? Well, it's accurate in the sense that everybody has the same valuation date. So that's the same point that all properties get valued at. And just to kind of highlight again and bring it back into the building permit process, new construction has the same valuation date. And what I mean by that is a home that's constructed and we go out and we assess it, the number that we're provided for the assessment is the number, it's a hypothetical number based on what it would have sold for at that same common valuation date. I do want to bring it up because when we see new assessment, the numbers are still higher than existing homes. So it kind of seems like, well, maybe this is representative of a 2025 value. It's not. It's just based on the fact that newer homes that are being constructed, and I think we all know this, tend to be larger. They tend to have, more bathrooms, more bedrooms, and that's kind of where those values come in from. It's not because they're being valued in 2025 and the other ones are for 2016. It's just that's the hypothetical value, and it is still the same as January 1, 2016. And that's because the system that we have in the province is based on everyone paying their fair share, and it's just a distribution system, basically. Next slide, please. So when we come to those current value assessments, those 2016 values, where are they coming from? How does that come up with this stuff? There are 3 different approaches that are currently widely used for impact assessments. So I'll start with direct comparison. That's the one that's used for residential properties and vacant land sales or vacant land parcels. And that is the one that is based on primarily those market transactions, those open market sales, and it's comparing, what sold over here to what sold over here, and what are the differences, and these are the factors that are creating the most amount of value. I bring this up because obviously we said that most of the properties are residential, so this is the one that is going to be used, predominantly here in Nipissing. Next, we have something called the income approach, and this is looking at what we call the capitalization rate. It would be applied for things like motels, things like small commercial plazas, and it's based on where there's rents that are being paid, and impact values that information, but obviously it's not as predominant as direct comparison. And then the last one is the cost approach, and these are unique, rarely sold properties, and it's based on the cost of all of the structures and accessible fixtures on a property. And examples would be a farm property where there's a lot of very specific buildings that are unique to that farm. And what that looks at is, what is the replacement cost of all of those structures? And also, what is the depreciation applied to that for obsolescence and, buildings getting older over time? So that's kind of like the 3 different ways that each property does specify impact. Next slide, please. And although I did say, we're looking at all these factors in a direct comparison approach, that is true. There is over 200 factors that are reviewed by impact when we look at a residential property, for example. But the 5 major factors that are deriving the majority of the value are coming from these different ones. So the location, is it close to a highway? Is it on the waterfront? Obviously, we can tell that makes a big difference. The size of the lot, the quality of the construction, kind of going back to, is it built in 1995, or there's a kitchen island, you know, is that the standard? The square footage, that's the exterior square footage of the home, and then also the age of the property. So newer properties tend to have a higher value, so those are kind of the things to keep in mind when you look at those values. Next slide, please. So this video just really does a good job of explaining, you know, the impact of a reassessment. When a reassessment comes, you know, property values are going to change, but what does that really mean for your tax base and for property assessment? Are we playing the video? Did we say we would want to? We can try. Okay. It doesn't.
Technical difficulties.
That's okay, yeah, I mean, it can be homework if anyone's interested, it does do a good job. I like it because it really hammers in, you know, at the end of the day, the amount that's needed for taxes is not changing, depending on if the values of the properties change. It's kind of explains the distribution, so with 9 years between the last valuation date and today, markets may have shifted in terms of if there's been a new area of development, maybe now this is kind of like the area that people want to live in, it's driving property values up, and maybe the old area that was that hot area, those property values are going to go down in those 9 years. So there is some changes within the same tax class, but even though some people's taxes might go up, it usually means that some might go down, because again, it's just that distribution system. Wow, the video does a way better.
We'll post it out.
Okay, yeah, it's good. Okay, if there are, you know, ratepayers watching this, I think it's a good example for them to see this kind of watch like what does happen. I think at the end of the day, you know, as a homeowner, our property taxes are going up every single year, and that's not going to change. The reassessment won't fix that. It might change the way the rate the taxes are, but it's not going to change generally the amount that people are paying, I guess is what I'm saying. And again, we strive to create an equitable system, and I think it'll, if we go to the next slide. And then the next slide. One thing to hammer home for sure for any property owner who would be experiencing a significant shift from where their assessed values are before, or they have concerns or things don't feel as fair. MPAC does make it extremely simple and easy for any property owner to kind of challenge how they feel about the property assessment. So, you know, what we're just asking people to do is, could I have sold my property for the amount that the assessment is as of that common valuation date? And if they think, this is ridiculous, you know, we have the About My Property website. It has so many resources for homeowners to go on. They can see everything that's assessed for their property, make sure that there's no errors or anything like that. And then if they still think, okay, there's no errors, but I still disagree, there's tools on there where they can compare their assessment to neighboring assessments. And then if they're seeing things like, why is this one 10,000 less or whatever, you know, they can create kind of a case that they can file within the same website to say, I want to file a request for consideration. I want to review. It's free for property owners. There's a legislated timeline for MPAC to take those concerns, review them. They do a full property inspection. So it's a pretty good process. Again, just because it's free, it's pretty timely. And if there are changes that need to be made, they will be made in a year, and MPAC provides that back to the municipality. So things do get resolved. But I will say that there is 3 outcomes for resolving a request for reconsideration. the assessment may go down, which would result, I guess, in a lower tax bill. The assessment could go up, and how that happens is because we're on site, we're reviewing the full property. You know, if there are things that are missing from the assessment, they will be added, so that is a possibility. And then also, which may happen pretty frequently, is there is no change. So what the homeowner will still get out of that process, even if there is no change, is they have that one-on-one conversation with the assessor. They get to go through the property details. They'll learn something about the assessment. Maybe that's not what they wanted, but there is some of that to it. And if their property tax or if their property system doesn't change, and if their property system goes up, there's still another avenue for people to resolve their concerns, and that's through the appeal process through the assessment review board. All homeowners in the residential tax class do need to start with the request for reconsideration, but it's not the end of the process for them because there's still another mechanism that they can kind of invoke to resolve those concerns. Now, I will say that when it is a request for reconsideration, it's just between MPAC and the property owner, and then MPAC would relay that information back to the municipality for their changes. When it is an appeal, the municipality is a party to that as well. So, Laura, next slide, please. Yeah, moving into, you know, what can MPAC provide for property owners to kind of help them learn about different things, like what's happening and all of that stuff. Again, I know I talked about my property for the request for reconsideration, and that is an important part of it, but there's also other things that people can do for about my property. Yes, they can go in and look at other people's property assessment, which might be the number one thing that people find interesting, but there's also different kind of self-serve tools on there. So one example is updating your own mailing address. So historically, or even today, you know, the municipality might have to do that on behalf of the homeowner, but it actually creates an additional step because there has to be an authorization from the homeowner, but they can actually go in themselves. Where this is really beneficial is if people are moving, if they have a seasonal property, you know, in Nipissing, but they actually have a primary residence somewhere else and they sell that property. It's nice to be able to update that so that their information stays current, and that there's no, you know, missed notices. It also is a centralized location for any notice that MPAC sends out. So another thing, if someone is building a house over here and they took out the building permit, but they said they still live at this house and now they moved, they're in the new house, and we send them a notice and they don't get it, which you may have heard before, I never received anything. Well, if they go into the About My Property portal, they will have access to any letter that MPAC sends out. So it's a good secondary feature to be aware of. Just like if you're going through some of these changes and you think you might be missing something, there's another way to access it. If people don't have access to the About My Property portal, they can contact our customer care center. We have a team of people who just help people get into this system. And then the last thing that I think is a nice tool about it that is a change that I think took place in the last couple of years is for school support designations. So I don't know when it really happens historically. I haven't been here for that long, but I think at one point it was like a paper-based form. But now homeowners can go in and make those changes, and there's also another portal just for tenants. So they also are able to go in and online change. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, what are we doing for municipalities? You know, we take their money, but what do they get in return? So, you know, MPAC is MPAC is constantly available in my phone to the staff of municipalities to answer questions as they come up. We have a portal similar to like the About My Property portal that we provide to municipal staff, and it gives them a tool to, again, review all the information about all of the assessments that's happening in their community, to flag properties to MPAC to say, hey, I think there's something concerning here that you need to look at, to highlight anything that is a priority to the municipality. In addition to that, you'll see MPAC out at different conferences. I know I recognize some of you being out in the community. So we're out, you know, doing presentations. We have a website on our, like a landing page on our website that is tools that can be used by municipal counselors. I know a lot of the stuff that we provide to municipalities is just for municipal staff due to privacy, and you don't always get the same access, but that's okay. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's important to take away that, you know, MPAC is the ones who are responsible for the assessments, and if you are getting concern from residents, definitely just feel free to direct them to us. You know, we are the ones who have the answer for those numbers, and we have a whole support network in place to help property owners understand where those values are coming from, and if corrections need to be made, making those corrections. One other thing I guess I will highlight that is kind of newer, and although it's something that we just rolled out to municipal staff, if you are a property owner, you can go into the Development Property Portal. We have something called the Property Pulse Dashboard, which is a little bit interesting in the sense that when we look at assessed values, we are looking at the 2016 values, which is interesting, but what are houses really selling for? So the Property Pulse Dashboard gives you that snapshot of like actual sales information to see like what, if there was a reassessment, might some of these properties have. So it is a cool tool, and it also gives you the ability to look at other municipalities. So, you know, where do we compare next to our neighboring municipality? It can be a little bit interesting. And then there's also some tools for like age of the property, and then like a little bit to property type. It's not super sophisticated, but it is giving like market information back, which is interesting. Yeah, so I think that's my whole presentation. If you have any questions, I think we are out of time, but.
Well, thank you, Alice. Questions? We'll do this quick.
The next physical assessment.
It would be good to know that information.
Yes.
I don't have the information. Like I said, if the province is undertaking their review, it started in 2023. I would hope that we're gonna have some additional information. I would like to know super far in advance personally, but I can't control that, and I don't have that information. For anyone who was here during the last reassessment, was it okay? Everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a date, and
Well, that's the question we keep getting asked when we're out there. People go, well, when's it gonna come?
yeah.
Don't know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
The province doesn't know.
Yeah, and I mean, we were asking the questions on behalf of municipalities. I know that I've seen circulations out, like emo is directing the question to the municipality or to the province, so they are getting that back. They're hearing it. Unfortunately, whatever is entailed in this province-wide assessment is taking some time. So obviously, I think we can all agree there's been a lot happening, and maybe just like during COVID, the assessments aren't on the top pile of the radar, but I know that there were signals in the budget, just like within the fall budget, that they are still making changes, you know, provincially to tax legislation. We've seen them introduce since the last reassessment a number of subclasses within the tax system. So, you know, they are doing that. They've signified that they're looking at changes in the sense that they want to do maybe an electronic roll. So looking at things like that, looking at making the assessment roll available for the public in different ways. So these are all signifiers that there are things that are happening behind the scenes that we just don't know about, and they are giving us some information, but I think we just have to wait until they're ready to tell us what the new system is going to be, or what the new date might be.
Well, thank you very much, Alice. That was well done.
Thank you. It's here. I'm new to the council circuit, so I will say that every meeting is a little bit different, which is what makes it fun. So.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, hopefully for anyone who's going to AO, I will be there. Maybe they will have some more information. I mean, usually the big players go to that conference, but.
Well, for the township side, we keep up with all of our subs and omits and all of the new assessments, so we keep up on everything and make all those adjustments as they're received.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know because there's definitely different ways of doing things. You can be ABC circle. So yeah, okay, perfect. Well, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
And we use Municipal Connect almost every day.
Yes, I was in it today.
Yeah, I'm also in it. I was in there today and I noticed they updated it and I was like, oh, what is
Yeah.
this? So if you are in there and you do see changes in that portal, I do want to just say this is just inside baseball, but clear your cache and then it fixes that change if you are in that part of it. But if you do have questions after that, just let me know. But that's what happened to me today. And then I just cleared my browser history and then it was working properly, but they did roll out something.
Perfect. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Thank you. All right, see you guys.
Very
you.
good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we will move on to staff reports. Councillor Foot.
None for me.
Thank you. Councillor Chalapenko.
We did the bottle count for the rec committee today. And big thank you to Dee, James, Mark, and Kathy. We raised $418.50, and it was hot and dirty. There was a significant amount of garbage in this one, but it went smooth.
I was surprised how much garbage
Yeah,
you sorted out.
there was a fair bit, lots of recycling and yeah. But yeah, really good haul. So
Good.
they worked through all that heat. They did a great job.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
I was hoping that we could put a sign up at both landfills at the bottle drive sheds that says not water bottles, not pop cans. If there's something we can work out, like it doesn't have to be instant, but in the future maybe.
And I'll take a note.
And I noticed in Dan's staff report, the very last piece, I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
And you should be noted for that.
This whole staff report was great.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kirk.
I have. Oh, police board. Board report to the province. They wanted our 3-year plan. We're a brand new police board, so we're putting together our 3-year plan. Well, they still wanted a report on it. Anyway, so we're learning a few things. So they're getting busy now with the joint municipalities report. So you're probably going to get some info on that for joint municipalities. Just giving you a heads up. The golden helmets will be in calendar on
Saturday.
Saturday. Thank you. I didn't write that down. They have a full complement now, and I've said this before, but they have a full complement of officers now, and it appears the officers to our precinct are to the Powassan detachment. They prefer to work out of the Powassan detachment, which is advantageous to us. A lot of the other ones prefer to work out of the North Bay detachment, which is, it slows down response times and all that. But our guys tend to, I say guys, we're also going to have 9 people off this summer on mat leave, just so you know. The Marine unit is fully covered this summer, so they will be out every day this summer. The ATV unit will be out most days this summer. They're splitting that up a bit. I guess and they're bringing people in from regional to cover some of the mat leave. So we're gonna we're gonna also start seeing more on the road. That's what we asked for, that's what we're paying for, so, and then we had a discussion on the phase 2 of updating the regional station. They discussed potentially calendar, potentially in the 94. There's a couple of things going around. They still haven't decided yet. So we were talking about the update on that. Our detachment is leading the region in traffic numbers. So they are out there. They're getting out there with the full complement is a reflection of that. Not everybody has a full complement at this point. The auxiliary program is coming on board to engage the community. Now the auxiliary program is, they're going to work with the boards. They want more board engagement at public events. So if there's an event in our community, myself, and probably Sean will be working a booth for it'll be called PNC, which is Township of Nipissing Calendar Police Association Board. And so we'll start working on that. We have to get all of our stuff together. We'll probably be a while getting that. They had 40 officers on the ground this weekend. None of them here. They were all in Bonfield and Matawan. But they had 40 officers on the ground, and they had both their helicopters, Orange and 4 M&R helicopters work that scene. McMullen was the IC for that, and so he was looking a little ragged at the meeting. I don't understand why, but it's like he didn't have any sleep or anything. But and he's going to be working on some other initiatives, so he's going to be pulled away from the detachment for a while. So our interim detachment commander will be none other than Staff Sergeant Andrew. So somebody we all know, so he'll do well, and we're very confident that he'll do okay. And we're looking into the level of community involvement, and that's where they're saying the association or the board committee members should be out in the community, and you'll probably, I gave Chris a thing here. This is the presentation that they did on rules of engagement for board members. It's pretty lengthy. So anyway, that's going to be coming, and so we're going to need a community booth. And then we signed up for SharePoint. So anybody who is on the police board, you have to be on the police board to use SharePoint, so we can share our ideas. So for instance, this summer, our next meeting will be at the end of September. But this summer, any board members who want, we don't have to worry about calling a meeting. We can just throw it onto SharePoint, and all the board members can, it's private to the board members, so we can just throw all of our ideas on there. And then when September comes and we have our meeting, then we can sort all of that out, and hopefully we will have our budget for 2026 together before December, so that we will have something for council. So when we start doing our budget, we will have something concrete to work with. That's all I have for that.
Thank you, Councillor Turkey. I had a Pines meeting June 17th. We had a presentation and approval of the 2024 audited financial statement. Kenelex Construction, I don't know if anybody goes out there, you don't have to go out there, but their hours of operation are 7:30 till 5. So when they're there, there's not a lot of room to maneuver around that area. The visitors parking is closed for storage, so it'll be closed till this project is over. We finally agreed on the winter maintenance that the renters had talked about, and they're totally responsible for everything, which they should be. It's independent living, so even asked if they could have their cars cleaned off, and that's not happening either. So when it snows, they gave us an update on the cost of the apartment overhaul. So when a tenant moves out, they go in, they paint, they do whatever flooring and that. It costs $6,000 an apartment to update it before the next renter comes in. So we hope they're going to stay quite a while. And our next meeting is August 19th. That's all I've got. So I need a mover. That the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 10th, 2025 be adopted and published. All in favor? And I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Foot. Councillor Phil. That we authorize the municipal administrator's attendance at the 2025 Annual Municipal Finance Officers Association Conference and Training Workshops. All in favor? Mover, Councillor Scott. Seconded by Councillor Kirby. Whereas a formal procedure providing guidance on the township roadside brushing program is a best practice to educate and inform the public and ensure a structured implementation of the program for staff. Now therefore, the Council of the Township of Nipissing approves policy number 2025-02-PW roadside brushing procedure effective upon passing. All in favor? Carried. So everybody's read their correspondence. The first one we dealt with not that long ago, actually. So the Township of Georgian Bay requests for support of a position paper on floating accommodations and suggested regulations. So, yeah. Corporation of the Township of Black River Matheson requests for exemption to propose mandatory firefighter certification requirements O-Reg 343-22. So we're way beyond that. We're, yeah. So municipality of Tweed, notice of motion O-Reg 391/21 blue box requesting review and revision of ineligible sources of recycling and management. We've dealt with this. Good. And the Nipissing Museum Board of Management meeting minutes held June 4th, 2025. So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Foot. Councillor Kirky. Have we received the correspondence reported as presented? All in favor? Mover and the seconder, Councillor Hill. And Councillor Scott, seconded. That the statement of accounts dated June 7th, 12th, and 19th, 2025 totaling $262,668.73 be approved. All in favor? And I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Perkin. That we pass bylaw number 2025-20, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held June 24th, 2025, read this first, second, and third time and passed this 24th day of June, 2025. All in favor? Need a mover, a seconder. And Councillor Scott. That the meeting be adjourned at 7:26 PM. Next regular council meeting to be held July 15th, 2025. All in favor?